so somehow he, as a winemaker, considers him like the conductor of an orchestra, which has the main task to cast, to find a lot of talented musicians, to train with them, and then hopefully provide us a harmonious, pleasant concert.
Welcome to this special Clubhouse session of the Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as members of the Italian wine community engage in fascinating conversations about contemporary wine topics. If you enjoyed the show, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. And remember to subscribe and rate the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your pods.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Ambassador Corner. My name is Carla Ravagnolo and today I'm pleased to welcome Wim Sas and Judith Unterholzner.
Hello.
Hello.
So Wim Sas is a seasoned wine expert with over 30 years of experience in the wine industry. Based in Lille, Belgium, he's also the founder of Wijnkennis, a wine import company that focuses on quality wines from both the old and new world. Besides being an importer, he's also a wine writer and wine educator, and he's also earned the title of Italian Wine Ambassador. Thank you so much for joining us today, Wim.
It's my pleasure.
So, scrolling through your website, I've noticed you put a lot of emphasis on the term quality wines. May I ask you to expand a little bit on this? What do you mean today with quality wines?
Well, I believe there are a lot of wines on the market, but the true quality wines, it's always a little bit different. Of course, it's always a little bit personal also. But for me, quality wines are wines from little wineries with a heart, with passion made and done a lot of efforts in a winery, not only in a vineyard, but also in a winery. And they are not about just selling, but they are proud. They make such great wines. And this is exactly what I also found with while tasting the wines of Gump we are talking about today.
Yeah, this was going to be my question for you. Is this one of the reasons why you invited Gump today?
The reason why inviting them is very easy. For me, it felt completely natural because I met Marcus, I met Judith, and they are such wonderful, humble people. They truly captured my heart. Besides this, every time I taste their wines or let the customers taste their wines, I just get goosebumps every time. And not just because of the high quality of the wines, but also you can imagine once you are at the place of Gump and you see the stunning view, the stunning setting they have, well, it's just a true gem you find in Alto Adige. Also, I never appreciated Sauvignon Blanc that much, but I fell in love with Sauvignon Blanc, tasting the wines not from Sancerre or not from Pouilly-Fumé, but this experience from Alto Adige, especially Gump Sauvignon Blanc. Also, the Weissburgunder is fantastic, and I'm not even talking about their Pinot Nero. The winery Marcus Prakwieser is running, Gump is for me at Wijnkennis, is a perfect match. They just make a few wines, they make a limited production, and that's just what I'm always searching for.
I can tell you I have a very special connection with these wines and these producers, but how did you actually discover them? How did you get in touch with Gump?
Well, as everything in life, the most beautiful things, they happen by coincidence. It was no different with them. We were on our holiday in Alto Adige and researching some wines from the region. I believe it was in 2020. I came across the winery Gump and remembered I have tasted some of their wines and found them okay, terrific. We stopped. We tasted the wines. I was just blown away by them. I decided to buy some bottles from Judith to take them home because for me it's important to retaste them outside of a holiday setting. And one thing led to another, and now we are here.
So, what would you say are the learning objectives today from this interview?
Well, for me, it's quite clear. Alto Adige is a well-known region. Wines are gaining more and more fame everywhere. But people talk about Alto Adige wine, and when they do, they always mentioning the cooperatives like Terlano, St. Michael, Eppan, Nals Margreid, and so on and so on. These cooperatives are doing a fantastic job, by the way, and almost everybody has a few bottles of these producers at home. But the small family producers like Gump, they are still less known, and it's my belief that needs to change.
Well, so without any further ado, I'll leave the room to you, Wim and Judith. Have fun. I'm looking forward to learn more about Gump.
Okay, hello Judith. I hope you're fine. I heard something telling you about a crazy harvest. I hope everything is okay and you are not suffering too much from the lousy weather conditions you are experiencing now.
Yeah, hello from the Dolomites. And first and foremost, thank you very much also for the invitation to join you at tonight's Ambassadors Corner of the Italian Wine Club. Although we are somehow in the middle of the crazy harvest season, I obviously wanted to take the opportunity to introduce you also to our tiny little family winery. And at the end of the day, harvest is what you are working for the whole year long, because every single time you're touching the wines and execute one of the various jobs that need to be done in your plots, it's always a great satisfaction when at the end of several months of growing and various weeks of ripening, the moment is there and you can pick and bring the grapes to the cellar and then see what the vintage will offer you.
Actually, that is a good point you make. The vintage is extremely important, and it's a work of a whole year. So the job needs to be done good and clear. Now, you are vintaging now, and your winery of Gump is in a place not that well known in Alto Adige. It's in Vie, Alosquiliar. Can you tell me and the listeners a little bit the exact location within the Alto Adige region we are in?
Yeah, so actually, Alto Adige is a rather small wine growing region, especially on the national Italian setting. And we all together, producers in the territory, are not even doing 0.8% of the national Italian wine production. So we're really tiny and little as a whole province. And the village of ours, actually, Fiello Scigliar, is just north of Bolzano in the so-called Isarco Valley, Valle di Isarco in Italian, which is Alto Adige's and Italy's northernmost wine-growing territory. And it's the valley between Bolzano and Bressanone. So most of the listeners that have already visited my home region have quite probably already crossed the Valle di Isarco, because this is where the highway from the Brennero, from the Austrian border, goes along and brings you all the way south. So where you're then proceeding to Verona for Vinitaly, or heading even to other parts of the great and multifaceted Italian wine world. Fiello Scigliar is on the foot of the Dolomites. So we as a village are already part of the UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site Dolomites. And it's an area with quite mountainous topography, meaning that we have super steep inclines, and our vineyards are located between 1,300 and 2,800 feet. So sun-drenched during the day, also thanks to the steepness, but with the high mountain peaks in our back that bring us day by day cool winds from the high snow-covered peaks.
Okay, that's clear. I also passed a few times, and last time when we stopped at your winery at Gump, we decided next year not to take the highway of the Brennero, but to pass the other direction. So we come by the stunning views and the higher places of the Alto Adige there. It's going to be not that easy drive, but I believe it's going to be a beautiful drive. Now, when we stopped at your place, I noticed your wineries. They are all situated nearby the winery. Can you tell us what distinguishes these vineyards?
Our vineyards are primarily directly around the farm itself, which obviously has to do with the fact that we are a small family-run and owned reality. Hence, we have first and foremost historical plots that were already planted by the former generations and which Marcus got as a heritage from his father. And then once around the year 2000, he took the decision to convert the formerly mixed farm into a 100% grape growing and winemaking reality. He step by step converted all the available surfaces, meaning former fields, grassland for cattle farming, as well as apple orchards, into vineyards. And once the surface directly at the farm had all become viticultural surface, just nearby he took the opportunity to rent, respectively, buy additional plots and plant vines there too. And the idea or the desire to have the vast majority of our production sites directly there where the winery is has to do with our particular soil, the so-called quartz porphyric rock of volcanic origin, which we have just underneath the vineyards. And in order to be able to underline the specific characteristics of that eruptive stone, obviously you need to make sure that most of your or all your grapes are grown on that soil type.
Is this the fabulous Dolomite lime you're talking about?
No, actually, the Dolomite limestone is much younger, and it's a highly calcareous containing soil, which was formed during the era of the Eternal Sea, when the main alpine chain was nearly completely underwater. And in that big sea, there was quite a lot of life, meaning coral reefs, and they were then solidified about 40,000 years ago when we had the last real ice age, and hence the whole territory was covered by a thick layer of ice, which obviously, due to the pressure as well as the weight of the ice masses, compressed the coral reefs. And they were then the basis for the Dolomites that were formed once the ice melted those 40,000 years ago.
Okay.
The volcanic rock, sorry.
Yeah, no, the volcanic rock.
The volcanic rock on which we are located is way older. Instead, it is supposed to be around 240 million years old. And it actually was formed when the African tectonic plate directly crashed into the Euro-Asian one.
Yeah.
And due to that, the Alps were folded, and on the borderline, quite a lot of volcanic activity happened. And amongst others, there was this huge volcano, the so-called supervolcano, in the basin of Bolzano. Yeah. And because of that, nowadays, we still have that volcanic rock underneath our vineyards.
And giving these fantastic tastes to your wines, of course. Now, you were telling me, Judith, that Marcus, he started in the winery in 2000, and he started producing his own wines, making his own labels. I just make the assumption that prior to this, he sold the grapes to the local cooperative. And can you tell me what motivated Marcus doing this, to pursue this change in direction?
Yes, so actually, the farm itself has been existing for several centuries already. And we know that already in 1546, not only Gump existed, but already active vine growing and winemaking over here. Because the very first written document that proves the existence of Gump dates back to mid of the 16th century, when in a castle nearby, a first wine delivery our ancestors made to the noble family living there was documented. So we know that the farm existed, that viticulture existed, but we do not really have a clue on how much wine was made and who made the wine. We can assume that the vast majority of the fruit was delivered to a co-op. And once Marcus's father was active, he continued that tradition, bringing most of the crop to Cantina Gries, nowadays Cantina Bolzano. And just a small percentage was kept at the farm, where he vinified exclusively Schiava for private consumption, meaning for friends and family. And once tourism started in the Alto Adige area, so the destination just nearby, respectively, the part of Alto Adige where the farm is also located, the first hosts, the first restaurateurs and hotel owners came to Gump and asked Marcus's father if he wouldn't be willing to sell them some wine too, because they had already had the easy drinking, lighthearted red from him somewhere at a friend's or a family member's house. And so somehow everything took off, but only with Marcus in the year 2000, the final decision was taken to quit the membership at the co-op and to vinify the whole production directly at Gump, because it was Marcus's belief and desire to show what the potential and the peculiarities of our terroir are. And obviously, once your fruit ends up in the same vat, then deliveries from a dozen of other farmers from totally different terroirs, most of the characteristics are neutralized. And hence, with 2000, once he has become the official proprietor of Gump, he did his first Presolis, Pinot Bianco, so his first single vineyard white, and then step by step also other varietals were added to the portfolio.
Okay, that's very nice to know. I didn't know all these facts exactly, but I think Marcus made the right decision in making his own wines and all on labels. Now, everybody knows that Alto Adige is renowned for the high quality of white wines, especially made with internationally mostly French grapes. I mentioned already Sauvignon Blanc in the entry, but you have also Weissburgunder. Now, when in the time Gump started, there were, I think, only red grapes. How is it possible that Alto Adige is so suitable for the production of these exceptional white wines?
That for sure has to do with the soil types we have in part of the region, limestone. So the sedimentary rock, the so-called dolomite, then obviously the volcanic rock, the quartz porphyric stone, which we have underneath our vineyards too, and obviously also the climatic situation. But we need to keep in mind a bit our history, because Alto Adige till the end of World War I was part of the big Habsburgian Empire, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire that somehow had Gorizia and Friuli and Alto Adige as the southernmost parts of it. So we were amongst the most important wine suppliers, so not we Gump, but we as a region, were amongst the most important wine suppliers for the emperors in Vienna, as well as for many southern German and Austrian monasteries, which had properties in Alto Adige too. And once at the end of World War I, from one vintage to the next, we became part of Italy. Towards south, because obviously at the Brennero, the border was closed, so there weren't really at the real beginning possibilities to continue a trade with the former partners. Towards south, instead, our easy drinking light-bodied red, our Schiava, was not appreciated in the sense that if you're grown with Nebbiolo, Sangiovese, Aglianico, and other full-bodied reds, our light-hearted, no tannin, low acidity red wasn't even considered a serious red. And so the already existing, but just as a niche in the niche, whites in Alto Adige were step by step enlarged in surface. Because already during our Habsburgian times, there was the still nowadays famous Istituto Agrario in San Michele, the Viticultural Research Center.
Yes.
In Trentino, which from Archduke Johann II got the task to find out where in Alto Adige there could be interesting plots for Pinot Blanc, for Chardonnay, for Sauvignon, which the Habsburgians had brought from France into their territory. The Habsburgians always had that strategy to enlarge their empire, not by fighting wars, but potentially by marrying their children strategically. And hence also one of their daughters, the wife of the king in Paris. And by visiting them for diplomatic reasons, but for sure they got some food and wine too, they somehow, or amongst others, discovered the Burgundy family of varietals as well as Sauvignon. And so the first plants of those varietals, the first young vines, came into Alto Adige. And once we somehow had to reinvent ourselves as a wine growing region at the end of World War I, then step by step, the already existing vineyards of Pinot Bianco, of Sauvignon were enlarged. And over the last decades, we have become a white wine territory.
Okay, and luckily, with the import of the Burgundy wines, you also have Pinot Nero, and you discovered Pinot Nero. And if you see now the exceptional quality also of Pinot Nero, just make a reference to your Renaissance Pinot Nero. It's also very nice to have these big red wines in that area. And about Pinot Nero, I want to ask you also, do you have a special approach, or what is your philosophy in crafting this wine you do? Do you utilize a Burgundy clone in the Pinot Nero production, or what is the tricky part you do?
Yeah, so for the Pinot Noir, we're using Burgundy clones. You're right, very trained palate. We have primarily, we're using the 777 as well as the 828 clonal material.
Okay.
But I think besides the vines, it's obviously also the style and the production philosophy. When vinifying Pinot Noir, Marcus wants to have fruit, yes, but crunchy red fruit. And in addition to that, always this spicy, slightly herbal aromatic profile. And he's reaching that by first and foremost catching the right moment for the harvest. Marcus is rather well known, especially amongst the Alto Adige winemakers and enologists, as a late harvester. But on the Pinot Noir, once we start, we are rather quick because we would like to prevent to have aromas that could remind you of dried or cooked fruit, so jammy flavors. And in order to get this crunched, slightly also medicinal, ethereal nuances, we are always working with quite an important percentage of whole cluster in the fermentation tanks. And what is de-stamped instead is not squeezed though. So that helps us to get the pure fruit, but at the same time, with the rasps in the vinification vats, also the possibility to extract the spiciness and the haptics from the rasps.
So a little bit carbonic you are using with the Pinot Nero.
Sort of, yes. But if you want to be technically precise, it's not 100% Massation carbonic. But it's
Okay.
a similar approach, though.
We'll talk about it. Well, talking about these red wines, and you already mentioned the other important grape you are vinifying, Schiava. It kept me that in my studies this year of Italian wine ambassador, Professore Attilio Scienza, he emphasized the increasing significance of Schiava in light of global warming. He told us that Schiava is maybe getting one of the most important grapes for the north of Italy. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so Schiava for us means tradition because we've been a 100% Schiava producers all the way till 1982. We were focusing just on that red. There didn't even exist a vine of white till 40 years ago at Gump. So Schiava is our cultural heritage for sure. But Schiava, you're absolutely right, or Professor Steens is absolutely right, is certainly also our future. Because Schiava is a wine where we as an area, respectively, where our facing slope here at Fier, for sure, with global warming we have already had over the last decade, has become an area where we are able to do very fresh, fruit-driven and crunchy Schiava styles. And where, if you're talking to Marcus's father nowadays, who was born in 1925, so he has seen many vintages of Schiava already, and Schiava is that wine he's still day by day drinking, a glass for lunch and one for dinner. So according to him, Schiava has been his lifeblood ever since. And
yeah, indeed, when I was in Alto Adige and talking to the producers, and I was asking the question, what do you prefer to drink from the wines you make? They always tell me, oh, we are just lovers of Schiava. We always drink a glass of Schiava every minute of the day. And you're just confirming this now. Yeah.
So Schiava is what he would say for daily usage. So for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, obviously intending the second breakfast, the so-called half morning snack. But if we refer to the rhythms, the working routine they had in the past, when they started at 5:36 a.m. the latest, and they worked very hard in the fields or in the forests, obviously by around 9:30, 10, they were hungry and they needed to recharge the batteries quickly. So drinking a glass of Schiava together with their sandwich with speck or high meadow seasoned cheese was somehow the ideal snack, the ideal break.
I must keep this in mind to do the same thing in Belgium, to reload the batteries, drink a glass of Schiava.
No, but actually, returning back to Professor Scienza's statement, Schiava for sure is a varietal that not only has history, but also has future because it's a very easy drinking, light-hearted red wine style. And with the summers, but even the winters that are becoming warmer and warmer, the climate that obviously is bringing us changes in cuisine. And if we compare to what not only the super famous free 2 or 1 Michelin star chef, but even the classic chefs in the trattorias, in the gasthaus, as we call it in Alto Adige, are preparing nowadays. It's mostly dishes that are lighter, that are quite often having vegetables as main ingredient. So
fresh with a nice acidity also.
Yeah, medium high to high acidity. Fat, yes, but more olive oil than butter. And a lot of low temperature sous vide preparation techniques, not only for fish, for meat too, if not even raw components. So obviously it's a type of cuisine where you need, if you're aiming for a red, where you need something refreshing, like Schiava, which thanks to the nearly present tannins, obviously can be served even slightly chilled during the hot summer. So Schiava is not only a wine for every daytime, but even a wine for every season.
Well, I will keep you in mind that next time we will visit you, we will go to one of these restaurants and do this experience together. It would be nice there in the Alto Adige mountains.
Absolutely, but not only our local cuisine, the classic dumplings or some cold cuts, some speck, the seasoned smoked bacon we're doing. Even thinking about classic Italian cuisine, a crunchy fresh pizza, a simple plate of pasta with a good tomato sauce from real tomatoes that have seen a lot of sun. It's a super meal, and it's a perfect fit with Schiava.
Okay, we will experience. I believe you on your word for it.
We will give it a trial.
Yeah, we will definitely give it a try. Now, Judith, you tell me several times when we meet that your wines are known as mountain wines, and I don't think we are revealing a secret telling this. But can you tell us the impacts of the mountains on your wine style and why you primarily have eastward-faced vineyards and nearly any plot on a southern exposure?
Yes,
why is this?
We have mostly westwards facing sides. So we are sort of on the slope below the Dolomites that is falling down to the Isarco, to the river that gave the name to our valley. And it's an area where, due to the exposure, we are getting the sun only relatively late in the morning. But then our sites are sun drenched all the way till the sunset. And as it is a super inclinated topography we have, I was mentioning before those 55 to 70% of steepness in our plots, which if you are skiers, it's all black slopes. The moment when the sun is the strongest is actually just in the late afternoon before the sunset, because only then the sun rays are touching in a 90-degree angle the fruit zone as well as the canopy. And once the sun is setting instead, after the warmest hours of the day, there is following a big temperature drop. So nearly immediately the cool down phase, because about an hour, maximum an hour and a half after sunset, we're getting the falling winds from the Dolomites in our back, so that are coming from the west. Hence, temperatures are dropped notably. And due to that, in the vineyard, we experience an effect that you eventually know from your garden at home or from some fruit trees in your area. The last peach or that last tomato that hardly reaches the color you would consider an ideal one or the ideal one to pick them, are nevertheless always those tomatoes, those peaches, apples, or whatever that are the most flavorful, because they are ripening slowly but continuously. And that slowliness and that consistency is giving us this intense flavors without losing acidity. And that's the main reason why Marcus is rather famous in the wine world for being such a late harvester, because he always says that if the weather god allows, he wants to wait because he isn't really risking to lose the acidity while still intensifying the flavors.
Okay, that makes sense. That's clear, and that explains quite a bit the taste of your wines. Also, you mentioned the very steep slopes. I assume everything is done by hand, everything is done manual. No mechanical treatments are possible then because of these steep slopes.
So saying nothing would be a lie, but we are quite limited. So we can use very narrow crawlers for cutting the grass, for the treatments, as well as for the transport of the boxes with the hand-picked grapes to the main road now during harvest.
Yeah.
But all the rest is still nowadays in 2024 pure handwork, like back in the days at the grandfather's time. So we are on average touching every single vine between 17 and 20 times a year. So we do not know them by name, but we have a quite experienced eye of where to do what and how to proceed or how to eventually improve the next year. So actually for us, the fact that we do so much of the jobs that need to be executed manually obviously gives us the possibility to individualize the works on every single vine. So it starts, for example, already with the pruning. If before making the first cut, you see, oh, that's a vine that was a bit weak last year, you are for sure cutting a much shorter main thrive in order to allow that plant to store more energy in the rootstock this year and guaranteeing us many more vintages with great grapes for the next years, if not decades.
Okay.
Well, if you see that there was or there's a vine that was not forced enough last year, you're eventually doing or leaving a longer thrive in order to challenge that plant a little more, because grapevines are fighters. They need and are used to, by their nature, to face challenges.
Well, you will succeed in facing these challenges. That brings us perfectly to my next question for you. It's a very challenging question. I noticed, because I know the demand of the wines of Alto Adige, they are very increasing, especially in recent years. You just have to visit the Alto Adige hall in Vinitaly to notice how crowded it is over there. And I worked with you, and I know you are a small producer. I believe you only make like 60,000 bottles or something like this. And sometimes I get the answer on my demand for wines that wine is out of stock, etc. How do you plan to meet the rising demand for your wines?
Good question. Very tricky question, and everything else then easy to answer. We try vintage by vintage to do our best to make high quality wines and to have a certain continuity in quality and hopefully, if the weather allows us, also in quantity. But for us, it's way more important to improve from year to year and to make the wines better and better, also thanks to the experience that is growing, than to grow in size. So we have recently had the possibility to plant 2 more vineyards in the near surroundings of our already existing plots, which will start producing from this year. But after them, right now, I do not see any possibilities to grow again. And we think it's better to do our job properly than to do more. So growing in quantity is not really something that's part of our strategy.
Okay, that's no problem for me, because you provided me with the answer I was expecting a little bit, and I was hoping you would say. Personally, I don't mind you telling me, okay, this wine is out of stock, you have to wait till the next vintage. It's like this. I prefer you to continue with the nice quality wines you make, instead, indeed, in growing and growing and growing to provide the whole world of your wines. If you just give me a little share of it, I'm really happy with it. Now, what for me is difficult, that is the distinctive names you give on the labels. I can understand Renaissance you use. I can understand a little bit of that. But my customers are also asking, what is the meaning of Medieval? What is the meaning of Praesulus? The other names on the labels of your wines. Can you fill me a little bit more information with this?
Absolutely. Yeah, so first and foremost, we've chosen primarily Latin names for the wines we do because we are always in this German-speaking environment with the two official languages in Alto Adige. And hence, we preferred somehow using Latin as a neutral language in order not to have German proper names that are super hard to pronounce or Italian proper names for our wines that are tricky for the German speaking world. Also because Alto Adige has been this sort of melting point in between the northern and the southern culture ever since. And actually the name Medievum for our fresh wines from the young vineyards comes from the Latin term for the Middle Ages. And that proper name was chosen in order to underline the long history Gump as a farm has, but also the long tradition winemaking and wine growing has over here at our family farm. Also because we have that very first written document that proves all the three things I just mentioned from 1546. Presolis instead is the former, when Latin was still a spoken and not just a written language, it's the former proper name of the hamlet where all our vineyards as well as the farm are located. So it's actually a geographical indication that was chosen for the wines from the old vines. So actually those wines which according to us really reflect well the peculiarities of the terroir and therefore also the name of the area they got. And Renaissance instead is meaning in France and in Latin rebirth or rediscovering, because our area somehow also thanks to Marcus and other vintners was rediscovered as a viticultural town in Alto Adige, because we had over here already back in the Middle Ages active viticulture. But then between the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 19th century, we had this so-called small ice age, which was not like in the last real ice age 40,000 years ago when the whole area around the main Alpine chain was under a thick layer of frozen water. But the small ice age was a period, more or several decades, when we had a temperature drop. And especially in areas with an elevation of 500 meters and higher, certain types of agriculture, like viticulture, didn't really bring continuous results any longer. And obviously, in those times, most of the farmers were producing in order to fill their cellars and their houses with products for the hard and tough winter months when there weren't any products to eat and to drink. So somehow to survive the cold period of the year. And obviously, if you're working the whole year long, a vineyard, and then you can't pick fruit because it doesn't reach ripeness, you will give it a trial this year after. You will give that plot another chance for a third year too. But then if your cellar still continues to be empty, you change to another type of agriculture, to other plants that bring you results. And so a lot of vineyards in the area here were abandoned, respectively converted into other types of agriculture. And only Marcus's father and then Marcus and other vintners nowadays too have somehow started to intensify viticulture here in VA again.
Yeah. And so Renaissance, that's the explanation then of the name. Well, it's good to know, and it's definitely a good story to tell. That helps a lot. Thank you very much for it.
But obviously for us, the Renaissance wines are not only reminding the past and not forget about history, but Renaissance for us are those wines which really show that it's the character of the place, of the terroir, but also the character of the person making the wine that is part of the whole terroir definition. So it's important that the soil is an appropriate one for the variety that was chosen, that the microclimate and macroclimate in that particular vintage are reflected in the wine. But you should also have the chance to catch the idea the winemaker had when he was deciding about the moment when to pick and about how to vinify and how long to mature and in which type of a barrel, respectively, that to mature the musts, respectively, to vinify the musts and to mature the wines.
Okay, we can say there's a little bit of Marcus's soul in these wines then. You definitely taste also, of course. Now, Judith, I just have one more question for you. And it's a little bit tricky also. It's also a little bit personal because I want to ask you if you can reveal a little bit of your secrets, a little bit of this magic touch you employ to consistently produce wines of such exceptional quality. What's your philosophy on winemaking that brings so much joy while savoring the wine, yet leaves us feeling a tinge of sadness when the bottle is empty?
So actually the main motivation of us as vintners, but also as winemakers, is first and foremost to work with and not against nature. So it's important to understand already during the growing season what the vintage and its peculiarities are. Because based on that, you need to adapt the works in the vineyards. And you have already, during those months and weeks, the necessity, or there's already then the necessity to start to think about the wines and how they are going to express the weather conditions, because that's what should be the character of the vintage. And then obviously the crucial moment when to start harvest. And there Marcus really relies on his palate. He has his rather famous Vespa. That's also why on many photos you see him with his quite old orange Vespa that he uses to drive back and forth and up and down in the vineyards through the rows, tasting berries, and based on that, deciding when to pick, respectively, where to continue harvest. And obviously, once the whole elaboration of the fruit begins and the vinification starts, again, to understand what makes that vintage special. And Marcus's idea of making wines really is to do wines where the second glass is better than the first, but not in the sense that you have to fight in order to finish that first glass, but in the sense that the first glass is emptied with such an easiness and so much pleasure that only once you ask for the next round or are repouring, you start reflecting how it came that first glass finished so quickly. And in order to make wines that have that unique character and obviously reflect him and the place over here, every single year we are micro-vinifying all the various plots, all the various subzones we have, even though they are planted with the same varietals, in different barrels, respectively, stainless steel. And by doing so, Marcus has the chance to understand every year and with every vintage better what the strengths as well as the weaknesses of all our subzones are. And so somehow he, as a winemaker, considers him like the conductor of an orchestra, which has the main task to cast, to find a lot of talented musicians, to train with them, and then hopefully provide us a harmonious, pleasant concert.
And longing for a second glass, as you were telling. It's perfect to know how a nice orchestra can be built in a wine tasting and sipping one of these beautiful wines. Thank you very much, Judith.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all for me.
Hopefully I was able to give you an idea of who we are, where we are, and what we want to do.
It's been extremely interesting, honestly. And actually, I really liked how you touch a little bit more on Schiava, because I agree a lot with you that it's the grape of the future. So it's been extremely interesting to learn more about it. But apparently it's time we are gonna close the room, but I really want to thank you, Wim and Judith, for joining us today, and I'm very much looking forward to try a glass of your Sauvignon Blanc.
Thank you. Yeah, if you should ever be in the area, hiking in the Dolomites is cool, but after the hardcore climb, or maybe not before, but after a mountain experience, stopping by for a sip or to taste some wines, we will be more than happy to host you. So just reach out.
Thank you so much. Have a great one. Bye everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Judith. Bye.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.